Ladies and gentlemen, Krzysztof the Polish Geek with another video, and this will be my last video before I go on a 2-week trip to New York City. I'll be back later and I will have more videos for you, but because tomorrow I'm already leaving for New York City, this will be my last video for the following 2 or 3 weeks, we'll see. And this time I decided to talk about 5 video games based on Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology. Greek mythology is my childhood. I remember reading Greek mythology, like kids' book, when I was like a little kid in elementary school. And I was always so fascinated by Greek mythology. The gods, the heroes. And by the way, yes, I prefer to call Hercules by his actual Greek name, Heracles. Yeah, that's his real name, Heracles. Yeah, so I remember reading all those stories and I love all the heroes, like, yeah, the aforementioned Heracles, Jason and the Argonauts, or Jason and the Golden Fleece, whatever. Odysseus, Theseus, Perseus, Atalanta. Yeah, I just love Greek mythology. It's very much my childhood, and I have so much knowledge on Greek mythology. And when it comes to movies, there haven't been many like amazing quality Greek mythology movies. There have been a few, like Clash of the Titans, the original, fuck 2010 remake. And then there was Troy with Brad Pitt. And then of course there was also Jason and the Argonauts from the 60s. And then there was like the 2000s miniseries Jason and the Argonauts. Although I haven't seen that one in a long time, don't know how well it holds up. I remember loving that one as a kid, but honestly I don't know how well it holds up at this point. But there have been some really good Greek mythology movies. But this video I decided to talk though about 5 best Greek mythology video games, because there surprisingly have been some really great Greek mythology video games, probably even better than the movies. Yeah, like when it comes to adapting Greek mythology, I think video games have been doing a much better job than movies. So here are 5 best video games based on Greek mythology. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily need to be strictly based on Greek mythology. It can totally be loosely based or just inspired by it. Yeah, so let's get to it. Number 5. Titan Quest. This game is awesome. It's like one of those hidden gems that has been forgotten, but it's so underrated. It's very much Diablo taking place in mythologies, because there's not just Greek, there's also Egyptian and the Silk Road leading through all of Asia. In this game you just like create and custom your own character and then you travel the world around. It's kind of like a similar RPG to Diablo, as I said, and you fight various Greek mythology monsters like all 3 Gorgons, and then you also fight Telos, the Minotaur, and also the Lernaean Hydra, although in Hydra's case it's more like only on the legendary level. Once you beat first 2 levels of difficulty, only on the highest difficulty you can really fight the Hydra, but the fight is awesome and it's totally worth it. And then you travel through Egyptian mythology world and then through Silk Road, as I said. And then there was also a add-on which was called Immortal Throne, and it was purely in Greece, specifically Hades, and you fought even more Greek mythology creatures, mostly from the underworld, like Cerberus, for example, and Hades himself. But Titan Quest, that's a very underrated game, and I really wish it got more love and recognition. And I'm really glad it has been re-released on Steam, actually, because thankfully now it's totally accessible to a lot of players. And I still have some fond memories of playing this game back when I was like only 12 years old in elementary school. Titan Quest, awesome and underrated video game. Number 4. Apophian. Yeah, this game on this very list is probably by far the most faithful game to the Greek mythology. It's an original story, but it's totally Greek mythology in spirit, and all the Greek mythology characters very much act like themselves and how they were in real Greek mythology. Like, for example, Zeus is much more of a jerk here than Hades, who has been often portrayed in the media as a villain, mostly thanks to Disney's Hercules. But this game is fantastic. Like, the story is that Zeus has grown tired of humanity and chooses to destroy all of humanity, and you play as Nicandrios, and your job is to stop Zeus. And this game is fantastic. It's a side-scrolling game where you fight enemies, but there is a really interesting story too. But the most appealing thing about this game is the art style, because it's Greek pottery. That's right. It's a Greek pottery art style, and I simply love the creative and unique art style of this game. Yeah, Apophian is a fantastic game, but the art style alone, I think, should make it worth to play. Love Apophian. Coming in number 3, and just as Apophian was as Greek mythology as you can get, this, on the other hand, is very loosely based on Greek mythology. It's mostly just uses it as an inspiration, and it's Icarus Uprising. I talked about this game only a few days ago when I was talking about which video games I think should be remastered on Nintendo Switch. And I already talked about how much I love that game. And this game is excellent. Even though, as I said, it only uses Greek mythology as inspiration, it doesn't change the fact that it's a magnificent game that uses its Greek mythology inspiration so well, because it's Nintendo produced. And I love how it nicely combines Greek mythology, but also a light-hearted, comedic style of Nintendo. This game is as Nintendo as you can get, and yet I love how it combines it with Greek mythology. I love Icarus Uprising. And the combination between Nintendo and Greek mythology, it's not something anyone would ever expect it to work, but here it just works, and it's even hard to explain. It just works! Number 2, and that game is a lot more ancient Greece than Greek mythology, but ancient Greece and Greek mythology are very much interconnected. Like, whole ancient history, like a lot of Greek mythology, is very much rooted in ancient Greek history. So yes, I think that absolutely counts, and that's Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Yeah, not only this game is very much, it's ancient Greece, and even though it's mostly ancient actual history, it still doesn't change the fact that there are actually some Greek mythological elements. Like, you actually do get to fight Minotaur, answer the riddle of the Sphinx, or fight the Gorgon, that is clearly modeled after Medusa. And the way Greek mythology is integrated into the game, it's wonderful. It's almost as if you feel like this could actually happen. I mean, the DLC, Fate of Atlantis, I personally feel that's where it goes a little over the board with the inclusion of the Greek mythology elements, considering this is supposed to be technically actual history rather than Greek mythology. But the amount it's used in moderation in the main game, I think works wonderfully. Especially that I remember one of the creators actually saying that in some ways using Greek mythology in a game based on true ancient Greece, in some ways, paradoxically, it is kind of historically accurate, especially that Greeks very much believed their Greek mythology to be real and all, and also some of the Greek mythological elements had some roots in the truth. So yes, even though it's an ancient Greek history game, I very much consider it part of Greek mythology, especially that the way Greek mythology is used in the game, the base game, not the DLC where I feel they went a little overboard with it, but in the base game, I think the way the Greek mythology is integrated is simply wonderful. I love Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And by the way, one more thing about this awesome game. I also love, this is one of the few games that actually refers to Hercules by his actual Greek name, Heracles, rather than Hercules. Because I too prefer very much to use the name Heracles, even though most stories that based on Greek mythology almost never use that name. It's almost has been forgotten. So glad it's used here at least. And number 1, video game based in Greek mythology is the whole God of War franchise. I mean, it's not just based on Greek mythology anymore, like last two games, it's a well-known fact, are Norse mythology, but it still doesn't change the fact that Greek mythology is how the game actually started, and for the many years of the series existence, it was very much strictly Greek mythology only. It's not like until 2018 when they finally decided to move Kratos to Norse mythology. Well, what else could they do with him? Like, all the Greek pantheon has been killed by this point. But I love the whole God of War franchise. Like, I love fighting all the gods and the heroes, and Kratos is so badass. I love God of War franchise. Although, I can't say it's quite faithful to the Greek mythology. While some of the elements they certainly got right, there are quite a few, actually a lot, that I say that they got very, very wrong. Like, for example, Cerberus was the one individual guardian of the underworld. He most certainly wasn't a whole species of dogs, like the game tries to make it. And Typhon was the father of all monsters. He was certainly not a titan, like he's presented in this game. But overall, despite inaccuracies to Greek mythology, and there are plenty of them, it doesn't change the fact that God of War franchise is one of my favorite video game franchises ever. I love God of War. This franchise is simply fabulous, and Kratos is the man. Yeah. Although, I will say one thing though. My favorite games in the series were paradoxically once Norse mythology, even though I'm not very familiar with Norse. I do like it, but I'm not very familiar with it. But it just shows a talent of the creators. And I'm really hoping the series continues. I don't know which mythology it goes next into. Maybe Celtic? Or maybe actually Slavic, which rarely is explored, but it would be actually pretty interesting. Or maybe Egyptian, although Egyptian seems like most logical choice, although apparently there were like comic books in between the Greek and the Norse already took place in Egypt, so I don't know. But I do hope the series continues and explores even more mythologies. Okay guys, so here are my 5 favorite video games based on Greek mythology. And I think if you're seeking a good game based on Greek mythology, any of those 5 would be a fantastic choice. Because Greek mythology is simply fabulous. And it's actually a miracle that there are actually quite a few video games based on Greek mythology that are so wonderful. And as I already said in the beginning, I will say it again, this will be my last video for the next 3 weeks, because I'm going to New York City for like 2 weeks. So for the next 2 or 3 weeks, there will not be any videos. Although there's this movie that now came out. It's sadly not here in Poland anywhere, but it is in New York City. And that movie is called The Sound of Freedom. So I'm totally seeing The Sound of Freedom when I'm in New York City. And when I get back, it will probably be my very first review I'll have for you guys. And press the like button. Please subscribe to this channel. Tell me some of the games you know that take place in Greek mythology. Maybe you played some that I'm not familiar with. Let me know in the comments and subscribe to this channel. And I will talk to you in 2 or 3 weeks in another video. Talk to you then. Bye!